Marcus Thompson stepped out of his sleek black Mercedes, the cool evening air hitting his face as he adjusted his expensive Italian suit. The 35-year-old billionaire had just finished another successful board meeting at his tech company's headquarters in downtown Chicago. His empire of software development and artificial intelligence had made him one of the youngest billionaires in America. But success had come with a price. The streets were bustling with the usual evening crowd, people hurrying home from work, street vendors calling out their last sales of the day, and the familiar sounds of city life echoing between the tall buildings. Marcus rarely walked these streets anymore, preferring the comfort of his private car in exclusive venues. Tonight was different, though. His mother, Eleanor Thompson, had insisted on meeting him at a small cafe in the older part of the city, somewhere she used to take him as a child. As he walked toward the cafe, Marcus noticed the stark contrast between his polished appearance and the reality of the street around him. There were people sitting on benches who clearly had nowhere else to go, their belongings bundled in worn bags beside them. The smell of food from nearby restaurants mixed with the less pleasant odors of urban life. This was a world he had left behind long ago, and being back here made him uncomfortable. Eleanor Thompson had always been different from other wealthy mothers. Even after Marcus had made his fortune and moved her into a luxury penthouse, she continued to volunteer at local shelters and spend time in parts of the city that made her son nervous. She was 72 years old now, with silver hair that she kept in a simple style and kind eyes that seemed to see the good in everyone. Marcus often worried about her safety, especially when she insisted on taking public transportation or walking alone in areas he considered dangerous. As he rounded the corner onto Maple Street, Marcus spotted his mother from a distance. She was standing outside the cafe, but she wasn't alone. Next to her was a young girl who couldn't have been more than 16 years old. The girl's clothes were dirty and too big for her small frame, and she was holding what appeared to be a cardboard sign. Marcus felt his stomach tighten with concern and frustration. The girl had long brown hair that looked like it hadn't been washed in days, and her shoes were worn through at the toes. She was thin, much too thin, and Marcus could see even from his distance that she was shivering slightly despite the mild evening weather. What shocked him most, however, was what he saw next. His mother, Eleanor, was gently placing her own jacket around the girl's shoulders. The jacket was a beautiful wool coat that Marcus had bought her for Christmas, worth more than most people made in a month. But that wasn't what made him freeze in place on the sidewalk, causing other pedestrians to walk around him with annoyed expressions. What stopped Marcus cold was the way his mother was leaning on the girl. Eleanor, who had always been so strong and independent, was using the young homeless girl for physical support. Her hand was resting on the girl's shoulder, and Marcus could see that his mother's legs were trembling slightly. This wasn't the confident, energetic woman who had raised him to believe he could accomplish anything. This was someone who needed help, and she was getting it from someone who appeared to have nothing. Marcus watched in stunned silence as the girl adjusted her position to better support Eleanor's weight. There was something gentle and caring in the way the young girl moved, as if she had experience taking care of others despite her obvious circumstances. She spoke to Eleanor in a soft voice that Marcus couldn't hear from his position, but he could see his mother nodding and smiling in response. The scene didn't make sense to Marcus. His mother had access to the best medical care money could buy, a full-time housekeeper and a driver who could take her anywhere she needed to go. If she was feeling unwell, why hadn't she called him? Why was she relying on a stranger, especially someone who was clearly struggling herself? As Marcus continued to observe, he noticed other details that troubled him. His mother's usually perfect posture was slightly stooped, and she seemed to be moving more slowly than usual. When had this happened? When had his strong, independent mother become someone who needed physical support? And why was the person providing that support a homeless teenager instead of him? The girl said something that made Eleanor laugh, a genuine sound that carried across the street to where Marcus stood. It was a laugh he remembered from his childhood, warm and full of joy, but he hadn't heard it in years. In his busy life of meetings, acquisitions, and business deals, when was the last time he had made his mother laugh like that? Marcus felt a complex mix of emotions washing over him. There was concern for his mother's apparent physical weakness, confusion about why she hadn't told him she was struggling, and an unexpected feeling that might have been jealousy. This stranger, this homeless girl with nothing to offer except kindness, was providing something for his mother that he, with all his wealth and resources, had failed to give. The businessman in Marcus wanted to march over immediately and take control of the situation. He could solve this problem quickly and efficiently. He could get his mother medical attention, arrange for better care, and probably help the homeless girl too if necessary. But something held him back. Maybe it was the peaceful expression on his mother's face, or the way the girl seemed to be listening intently to whatever Eleanor was saying. For the first time in years, Marcus Thompson, the man who had built an empire through decisive action and quick thinking, found himself completely uncertain about what to do next. The scene before him challenged everything he thought he knew about his mother, about helping others, and about what really mattered in life. As he stood there on the busy Chicago street, still frozen in place, Marcus realized that this moment was going to change everything. Marcus finally found the courage to move forward, his expensive shoes clicking against the pavement as he approached his mother and the young girl. As he got closer, he could hear their conversation more clearly, and what he heard surprised him even more than what he had observed from a distance. "You know, Sarah, when my son was your age, he used to worry about everyone but himself," Eleanor was saying to the girl, her voice warm but slightly breathless. "He would give away his lunch money to kids who forgot theirs, even if it meant he went hungry." The girl, apparently named Sarah, smiled softly. "He sounds like a good person. You must be very proud of him." Eleanor's expression grew complicated, a mix of pride and sadness crossing her weathered features. "I am proud of him, dear. He's accomplished more than I ever dreamed possible. But somewhere along the way, I think he forgot that lesson about taking care of others. Success has a way of building walls around people." Marcus stopped just a few feet away, close enough to interrupt but hesitant to break into this intimate conversation. He noticed that his mother's breathing seemed labored, and her grip on Sarah's shoulder had tightened. Sarah, despite her obvious youth and difficult circumstances, was supporting Eleanor with a maturity that seemed far beyond her years. "Mrs. Thompson," Sarah said gently, "maybe we should sit down for a minute. You seem tired." "I am tired, sweetheart," Eleanor admitted, allowing Sarah to guide her to a nearby bench. "More tired than I've let anyone know." Those words hit Marcus like a physical blow. His mother had been hiding her condition from him, and now he was learning about it from a homeless teenager. The guilt he felt was overwhelming. When was the last time he had really talked to his mother? Not just the quick phone calls about business or brief visits where he was always checking his phone. As they settled on the bench, Marcus noticed Sarah carefully arranging Eleanor's jacket to make sure she was comfortable. The girl's own threadbare sweater was obviously inadequate for the cooling evening air, but she seemed entirely focused on making sure Eleanor was warm and comfortable. "You don't have to take care of me, dear," Eleanor said softly. "You have enough troubles of your own." Sarah shook her head firmly. "Taking care of people isn't trouble, Mrs. Thompson. It's what makes us human. My grandmother used to tell me that before she died. She said the measure of a person isn't what they have, but what they give when they have nothing left to give." Marcus felt his throat tighten at these words. This girl, who clearly had nothing in material terms, was giving his mother something precious that he had failed to provide: genuine care and attention. The irony wasn't lost on him that someone who could afford the best of everything had failed to notice his own mother's needs, while someone with nothing had immediately seen and responded to them. "Tell me about your family, Sarah," Eleanor said, clearly wanting to shift attention away from herself. "Do you have anyone looking out for you?" Sarah's expression grew sad, but there was strength in her voice when she answered. "I've been on my own for about 8 months now. My mom died when I was 14 and my dad couldn't handle it. He started drinking really heavily and lost his job. We lost our apartment and then he just disappeared one day. I've been getting by ever since." Eleanor reached over and took Sarah's hand in both of hers. "I'm so sorry, dear. No child should have to face the world alone like that." "I'm not completely alone," Sarah said with a small smile. "There are other people on the streets who help each other out. And sometimes I meet wonderful people like you who remind me that there's still good in the world." Marcus watched this exchange with growing amazement. Here was a girl who had every reason to be bitter and angry at the world, yet she was comforting his wealthy mother and speaking about goodness and hope. Meanwhile, he spent his days stressed about stock prices and competitor moves, despite having every material advantage imaginable. "Sarah," Eleanor said thoughtfully, "can I ask you something personal?" The girl nodded. "What do you do to survive?" I mean, how do you eat? Where do you sleep? Sarah glanced down at the cardboard sign beside her, which Marcus could now see read, "Hungry, anything helps, God bless." She seemed embarrassed but answered honestly, "I stand on different corners and ask for help. Most people don't even look at me, which I understand. Everyone has their own problems. But sometimes kind people like you stop and talk to me, or give me a few dollars for food. There's a shelter about 10 blocks from here that sometimes has space, but it's usually full. When it is, I sleep in doorways or under bridges." Eleanor's eyes filled with tears, and Marcus felt his own eyes becoming wet. The casual way Sarah described this harsh reality, as if it were perfectly normal for a 16-year-old to be homeless and hungry, was heartbreaking. "What about school?" Eleanor asked gently. "I had to drop out when we lost our apartment," Sarah explained. "I was actually a good student. I loved reading and math, and I wanted to go to college someday. Maybe be a teacher or a social worker. Help other kids who are going through tough times." "You still could," Eleanor said firmly. "You're young and you're clearly intelligent and compassionate. This doesn't have to be your whole story." Sarah smiled sadly. "That's a nice dream, Mrs. Thompson. But dreams don't put food in your stomach or a roof over your head." Marcus couldn't listen anymore. Every word from this conversation was forcing him to confront uncomfortable truths about himself, his relationship with his mother, and his responsibilities to others. He had been standing in the shadows like a coward, eavesdropping on a conversation that was revealing more about character and humanity than any business meeting he had ever attended. Taking a deep breath, Marcus stepped forward into the light cast by the street lamp above the bench. Both his mother and Sarah looked up in surprise as his tall figure approached them. "Marcus," Eleanor exclaimed, her face lighting up with genuine joy despite her obvious fatigue. "I was just about to come meet you at the cafe." Sarah immediately started to pull away, clearly uncomfortable with the arrival of this well-dressed stranger, but Eleanor kept hold of her hand. "Don't go anywhere, dear. Marcus, I'd like you to meet Sarah. Sarah, this is my son, Marcus." Marcus stood awkwardly for a moment, unsure how to handle this introduction. Sarah looked up at him with wary eyes, taking in his expensive suit and polished appearance. He could see her calculating the vast difference between his obvious wealth and her desperate circumstances. "Hello," Sarah said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. She seemed to shrink into herself, as if she wished she could disappear entirely. "Hello, Sarah," Marcus replied, his voice gentler than he had intended. Up close, he could see that she was even younger than he had first thought, probably closer to 15 than 16. The realization that someone so young was surviving alone on the streets hit him harder than all the statistics about homeless youth he had ever read. Eleanor struggled to stand up from the bench, and both Marcus and Sarah immediately reached out to help her. For a moment, the three of them were connected by this simple gesture of care, and Marcus felt something shift inside him. "Mom, are you all right?" Marcus asked, unable to hide the concern in his voice. "You seem—" "I'm fine, sweetheart," Eleanor interrupted, but her labored breathing suggested otherwise. "Just a little tired from walking. Sarah here has been taking wonderful care of me." Marcus looked at Sarah with new eyes. This girl, who had every reason to be focused solely on her own survival, had been taking care of his mother while he was sitting in board meetings worrying about quarterly profits. "Thank you," he said to Sarah, and he meant it more deeply than she could possibly understand. Sarah looked surprised by his genuine tone. "Your mother is very kind," she said softly. "She listened to me when most people wouldn't even look at me." Eleanor smiled proudly. "Sarah was just telling me about her dreams of going back to school and maybe becoming a teacher. She has a beautiful heart, Marcus." Marcus studied Sarah's face as his mother spoke. Despite the dirt and obvious signs of hardship, he could see intelligence and determination in her eyes. There was also something else he recognized from his own youth, a fierce independence born from having to rely on yourself when the world lets you down. "Where are you from originally, Sarah?" Marcus asked, genuinely curious about her story. Sarah hesitated, as if she wasn't used to people asking her personal questions with sincere interest. "We lived in Riverside," she finally answered. "It's about an hour south of here. My mom worked at a grocery store and my dad was a construction worker before everything fell apart. And you came to the city because—" "I thought there would be more opportunities here," Sarah explained. "More places to find work, more people who might help. In a small town, everyone knows everyone, and when you're the homeless girl, that's all you are. At least here I can be anonymous. Marcus felt a pang of recognition. He had left his small hometown for similar reasons, though his path had led to Harvard Business School and eventually to billions of dollars, while Sarah's had led to sleeping in doorways. Marcus, Eleanor said suddenly, swaying slightly on her feet. I think I need to sit down again. Both Marcus and Sarah immediately supported her back to the bench, and Marcus was struck by how naturally they worked together despite being complete strangers. Sarah's movements were practiced and careful, as if she had experience helping people who were unsteady. Mom, I think we should get you to a doctor, Marcus said, his worry growing. You don't seem like yourself. Eleanor waved away his concern, but her gesture was weaker than usual. I'm just tired, dear. It's been a long day. What kind of long day? Marcus pressed. What have you been doing? Eleanor and Sarah exchanged a look that Marcus didn't understand, and he felt that familiar frustration of being excluded from his mother's life. Your mother volunteers at the community center downtown, Sarah said quietly. She helps serve lunch to people like me. She's been doing it for months. This was news to Marcus. Months? Mom, why didn't you tell me? Because you would have worried, Eleanor said simply, and probably would have tried to talk me out of it. Marcus couldn't deny that she was right. His first instinct would have been to point out the potential dangers and suggest she make a donation instead of volunteering personally. She's amazing, Sarah continued, her voice filled with admiration. She knows everyone's name, remembers their stories, and treats everyone with respect. Some of the volunteers, they mean well, but you can tell they pity us. Your mother doesn't do that. She sees us as people. Marcus looked at his mother with new understanding. While he had been building his empire and accumulating wealth, she had been building something entirely different, relationships with people who had been forgotten by society. The thing is, Sarah said, looking directly at Marcus for the first time, your mother hasn't been feeling well lately. She tries to hide it, but some of us have noticed. She gets tired more easily, and sometimes she has trouble catching her breath. The accusation in Sarah's words was gentle but clear. Where have you been? Marcus felt the weight of his failure settling on his shoulders like a heavy coat. Is that true, Mom? Marcus asked quietly. Eleanor sighed, and in that sigh Marcus heard the admission she had been avoiding. I didn't want to worry you, sweetheart. You're so busy with your company, and I know how much pressure you're under. You're my mother, Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion. You should always be my first priority. The three of them sat in silence for a moment, each lost in their own thoughts. The evening was growing cooler, and Marcus noticed that Sarah was shivering again despite Eleanor's jacket around her shoulders. The sight of this girl, who had been taking care of his mother while he had been oblivious, stirred something deep inside him. Sarah, Marcus said suddenly, making a decision that surprised even himself. Do you have anywhere you need to be tonight? Sarah looked at Marcus suspiciously, her street-smart instincts kicking in. She had learned to be wary of offers that seemed too good to be true, especially from wealthy strangers. I don't take charity, she said firmly, lifting her chin with pride despite her circumstances. I work for what I get. Marcus was taken aback by her directness, but he found himself respecting her even more for it. I'm not offering charity, he said carefully. I'm offering a job, Marcus, Eleanor said softly, understanding what her son was thinking. What did you have in mind? My mother clearly needs someone to help her, Marcus said, looking between Eleanor and Sarah. Someone who pays attention to how she's feeling, someone who cares about her well-being. Sarah, you've already been doing that job without being asked or paid for it. Sarah's eyes narrowed. You want to hire me to take care of your mother? I want to hire you to be her companion, Marcus clarified. Someone who can be with her when I can't, which is apparently more often than I realized. Someone who can make sure she's safe and comfortable. Eleanor started to protest. Marcus, I don't need a babysitter. It's not about babysitting, Mom, Marcus interrupted gently. It's about having someone around who notices when you're tired. Someone who cares about your stories and makes you laugh. Someone like Sarah. Sarah was quiet for a long moment, processing this unexpected turn of events. Why would you trust me with something so important? You don't even know me. You're right, I don't know you, Marcus admitted. But I've been watching you for the past hour and I've seen how you treat my mother. You could have walked away when she was tired, but instead you helped her. You could have focused on your own problems, but instead you listened to hers. That tells me more about your character than a resume ever could. Besides, Eleanor added with a smile, I've gotten to know Sarah over the past few weeks. She's been helping me serve meals at the center, and she's wonderful with the other volunteers and the people we serve. She has a gift for making people feel valued. Marcus felt another stab of guilt. His mother had been volunteering for weeks and he hadn't even known about it. How had he become so disconnected from the person who mattered most to him? Sarah looked down at her worn shoes, clearly struggling with the decision. What exactly would this job involve? Spending time with my mother, Marcus said simply. Going with her to her volunteer work if she wants to continue that. Making sure she eats regular meals, takes her medications if she needs them, and has someone to talk to. Being her friend. I already am her friend, Sarah said quietly. Then you'd just be getting paid for it, Marcus replied. Eleanor reached over and took Sarah's hand again. Sarah, dear, this would help me as much as it would help you. I've been lonely, and having you around has brightened my days. Marcus is offering something that would benefit both of us. Sarah looked up at Marcus with those intelligent eyes. What's the catch? There's always a catch. Marcus appreciated her wariness. She had clearly learned not to trust easily, which was probably what had kept her safe on the streets. The catch is that you'd have to trust me, Marcus said honestly, and I'd have to trust you. We'd both be taking a risk. What kind of money are we talking about? Sarah asked bluntly. Marcus thought for a moment. He wanted to offer enough to change her life, but not so much that it felt overwhelming or unreal to her. How does $5,000 a month sound plus room and board? Sarah's eyes went wide. $5,000? That's more than my mother made at the grocery store. It's not just for companionship, Marcus explained. I'd also want you to go back to school. Get your GED. Then think about college if that's still what you want. Education would be part of the job. Why? Sarah asked, her voice barely a whisper. Why would you do this for someone you just met? Marcus looked at his mother, who was watching him with proud tears in her eyes. Because my mother taught me that we're supposed to take care of each other. I forgot that lesson for a while, but she never did. And because you've been taking care of her when I wasn't paying attention? Eleanor squeezed Sarah's hand. What do you say, dear? Will you help an old woman feel less alone? Sarah was quiet for a long time, and Marcus could see the internal struggle on her face. She was clearly torn between hope and fear, between the possibility of a better life and the safety of expecting nothing. I'd want to keep volunteering at the community center, Sarah said finally. Those people there, they've become like family to me. I wouldn't want to abandon them. Of course, Marcus said immediately. That would actually be part of the job if my mother wants to continue volunteering there. And I'd need to think about it, Sarah added. This is a big decision. I need at least one night to consider it properly. Marcus nodded respectfully. That's wise. But Sarah, you can't spend tonight on the street while you're thinking it over. Please let me get you a hotel room for the night. Consider it a signing bonus whether you take the job or not. Sarah started to shake her head, but Eleanor intervened. Dear, it's supposed to get quite cold tonight. Please, just this once, let us help you. There's a decent hotel about 6 blocks from here, Marcus continued. Nothing fancy, just clean and safe. You can have a hot shower, a good meal, and a comfortable bed while you decide. Sarah looked between Marcus and Eleanor, her defenses slowly crumbling. You promise this isn't some kind of trick? People don't usually help someone like me without wanting something in return. The only thing I want in return is for my mother to be happy and safe, Marcus said sincerely. And from what I've seen tonight, you've already been providing that without even being asked. Eleanor smiled warmly. Sarah, sweetheart, sometimes good things do happen. Sometimes people do help each other just because it's the right thing to do. Let us prove that to you. After another long moment, Sarah nodded slowly. Okay. One night, and then I'll give you my answer tomorrow. Marcus felt a surge of relief and something else he couldn't quite name. Hope, maybe? Let's go get you settled in then. And Sarah? She looked up at him questioningly. Whatever you decide tomorrow, thank you for taking care of my mother tonight. I won't forget that. For the first time since he'd met her, Sarah smiled genuinely. And Marcus was struck by how young and beautiful she looked when she wasn't carrying the weight of survival on her shoulders. The next morning, Marcus found himself pacing in his downtown office, unable to concentrate on the stack of contracts waiting for his review. He had barely slept, his mind racing with thoughts about the previous evening's encounter. Every few minutes, he checked his phone, hoping for a text from Sarah with her decision. At 10 o'clock, his assistant knocked on his office door. "Mr. Thompson, there's a young woman here to see you. She says her name is Sarah and that you're expecting her." Marcus's heart jumped. "Send her in immediately." Sarah entered his office looking completely different from the night before. She had clearly taken advantage of the hotel's amenities. Her hair was clean and shining, her face was washed, and she was wearing the same clothes, but they looked much better after being cleaned. More importantly, she walked with more confidence, her shoulders straighter and her head held higher. "Good morning," she said politely, looking around at his impressive office with wide eyes. "Good morning, Sarah, please. Sit down." Marcus gestured to the comfortable chairs in front of his desk. "How was the hotel?" "It was wonderful," Sarah said with genuine gratitude. "I had forgotten what it felt like to take a hot shower and sleep in a real bed. Thank you for that, regardless of what happens next." Marcus nodded, trying to read her expression for clues about her decision. "Have you had time to think about our conversation?" "I've thought about little else," Sarah admitted. "I have some questions before I give you my answer." "Of course. Ask me anything." Sarah took a deep breath. "First, I want to make sure I understand exactly what this job would involve. You said I'd be your mother's companion, but what does that really mean day to day?" Marcus had spent much of the sleepless night thinking about this very question. It would mean spending time with her during the day when I'm at work. Going with her to the community center if she wants to volunteer, maybe cooking meals together, watching movies, talking about books, being there if she needs help with anything or if she doesn't feel well. "And you said something about school?" "I'd want you to get your GED first, then we could talk about college if that interests you. I'd pay for all of it and you could study during times when my mother is resting or doesn't need company." Sarah nodded thoughtfully. "What about living arrangements? You mentioned room and board?" Marcus had been prepared for this question too. "My mother lives in a penthouse apartment with several guest rooms. You'd have your own space, your own bathroom, complete privacy when you wanted. Or if you'd prefer, I could get you your own apartment nearby. Whatever makes you most comfortable. And what happens if this doesn't work out? What if your mother and I don't get along as well as you think we will? Or if I'm not good at this job?" Marcus appreciated that she was thinking practically. "Then we'll figure out something else. I'm not going to leave you homeless again, Sarah. Whatever happens, we'll make sure you're okay." Sarah was quiet for a moment, considering his words. "One more question. Why is this so important to you? I mean, you could hire a professional caregiver, someone with training and experience. Why take a chance on someone like me?" Marcus stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the bustling city below. "Because someone with training and experience might take good care of my mother's physical needs, but they wouldn't care about her the way you already do. They wouldn't listen to her stories or make her laugh or treat her like she matters." He turned back to face Sarah. "Last night was the first time I've seen my mother truly happy in months, maybe years. That was because of you, not because of anything I provided with all my money and resources." Sarah studied his face carefully. "You feel guilty about not paying enough attention to her." Marcus was surprised by her directness, but he realized he shouldn't be. Living on the streets had probably taught her to read people quickly and accurately. "Yes," he admitted, "I do feel guilty. I've been so focused on building my company and making money that I lost track of what really matters. My mother raised me by herself after my father died, and she sacrificed everything to give me opportunities. I owe her more than I can ever repay. So this is about making yourself feel better." The question was pointed and Marcus felt it sting. But as he looked at Sarah's serious expression, he realized she wasn't trying to be cruel. She was trying to understand his motives, probably to protect herself from disappointment. "Maybe partly," Marcus said honestly, "but mostly it's about doing what's right for my mother. She's happy when you're around, Sarah. That's not something money can buy." Sarah was quiet for several minutes and Marcus forced himself to wait patiently for her response. Finally, she looked up at him with determination in her eyes. "I'll do it," she said simply. "But I have some conditions." "Name them." "First, I want to keep volunteering at the community center. The people there are counting on me and I won't abandon them." "Agreed." "Second, I want to start school as soon as possible. Education is important to me and I don't want to wait. We can start the GED process this week if you want. Third, I want to be able to help other homeless kids when I can. Maybe use my story to show them that things can get better. Would that be okay?" Marcus smiled. Even in accepting help for herself, Sarah was thinking about helping others. That would be more than okay. I think it would be wonderful. And finally, Sarah said, her voice becoming more serious, I want you to promise me that you'll spend more time with your mother. Money and a companion are nice, but what she really needs is her son. Marcus felt the truth of her words hit him squarely in the chest. You're absolutely right. I promise. Sarah stood up and extended her hand to shake his. Then we have a deal, Mr. Thompson. As Marcus shook her hand, he realized that this was probably the most important business deal he had ever made. Not because of the money involved, but because of what it represented. A chance to do something right, to help two people he cared about, and to remember what really mattered in life. Welcome to the family, Sarah, he said with a smile. For the second time since he'd known her, Sarah smiled, that genuine, radiant smile that transformed her entire face. Thank you for giving me a chance to prove myself. Thank you for giving me a chance to be a better son, Marcus replied. As they made arrangements for Sarah to move in with Eleanor that afternoon, Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced in years. The satisfaction that comes from doing something purely good, with no thought of profit or personal gain. It was a feeling he had almost forgotten, but one that he realized he wanted to experience much more often. 6 months later, Marcus stood in the kitchen of his mother's penthouse apartment watching Sarah help Eleanor prepare Sunday dinner. The transformation in both women was remarkable, but the change in his own life had been equally profound. Sarah had flourished in ways that exceeded everyone's expectations. She had earned her GED within 3 months, scoring in the top percentile of all test takers. Now she was taking online college courses in social work, while maintaining her role as Eleanor's companion. More importantly, she had brought joy and energy back into Eleanor's life in a way that Marcus had thought was lost forever. Eleanor's health had improved dramatically with Sarah's attentive care and companionship. The mysterious fatigue and breathing problems had turned out to be largely the result of loneliness and mild depression. With Sarah's bright presence filling her days, Eleanor had regained her vitality and even started taking on more challenging volunteer projects at the community center. Marcus, stop lurking in the doorway and come help us, Eleanor called out, noticing her son watching them with a smile. I'm not lurking, Marcus protested, entering the kitchen. I'm admiring the efficiency of your cooking team. We're making your favorite, Sarah said, looking up from the vegetables she was chopping. Your mom has been teaching me all your childhood favorites. Marcus had been surprised to discover that Sarah was an excellent cook, a skill she had learned from necessity during the difficult months before her mother's death. Now she was learning Eleanor's recipes and adding her own creative touches, creating meals that were both comforting and delicious. Speaking of favorites, Eleanor said with a mischievous smile, Sarah has some news to share. Sarah blushed slightly. It's not that big a deal. What news? Marcus asked, genuinely curious. I got accepted, Sarah said quietly, to Northwestern's social work program. Full scholarship. Marcus felt a surge of pride so strong it surprised him. Sarah, that's incredible. Northwestern is one of the best programs in the country. The scholarship committee was very impressed with her essay about working with homeless youth, Eleanor explained, and her volunteer work at the community center provided excellent references. Over the past 6 months, Sarah had indeed continued working with homeless teenagers, but now she did it with resources and support. Marcus had helped her establish a small non-profit organization that provided temporary housing, job training, and educational support to homeless youth. Sarah's personal experience and genuine compassion made her incredibly effective at reaching kids who had lost trust in adults and institutions. When do classes start? Marcus asked. In the fall, Sarah replied, but I wanted to make sure it was okay with you and Mrs. Thompson. I know it will mean less time for companionship duties. Nonsense, Eleanor said firmly. Education comes first, always. Besides, I'll enjoy helping you study. It's been years since I've had an excuse to read about social work theory. Marcus watched this exchange with deep satisfaction. The relationship between his mother and Sarah had evolved into something that was part employer-employee, part grandmother-granddaughter, and entirely based on genuine affection and mutual respect. There's something else I wanted to tell you both, Marcus said, taking a deep breath. I've been doing some thinking about my own life and I've made some decisions. Both women looked at him expectantly. I'm stepping back from the day-to-day operations of my company. I'm promoting my vice president to CEO, and I'm going to focus on philanthropy and social impact investing. Eleanor's eyes filled with tears of pride. Marcus, are you sure? You've worked so hard to build that company. The company will be fine without me running every detail, Marcus said. And I've realized that I want to use my success to make a difference in the world. Sarah has taught me that there are problems money can solve, but only if you're paying attention and willing to get involved. Sarah looked surprised. I taught you that? You taught me a lot of things, Marcus said seriously. You taught me that wealth without compassion is meaningless. You taught me that sometimes the people with the least to give are the most generous, and you taught me that my mother is the most important person in my life, and I should never take her for granted. The three of them stood in comfortable silence for a moment, each reflecting on how much their lives had changed since that evening on the street 6 months ago. You know what I think we should do? Eleanor said suddenly. I think we should expand Sarah's youth program. Marcus, you have the resources. Sarah has the expertise and passion, and I have time and energy. We could help hundreds of kids instead of dozens. Sarah's eyes lit up with excitement. We could create a comprehensive program. Emergency housing, education support, job training, mental health services. Everything a young person needs to transition from homelessness to independence. Marcus found himself getting excited about a project in a way he hadn't felt since his early days building his tech company. We could start here in Chicago and then expand to other cities. Create a model that other organizations could replicate. The Sarah Thompson Foundation, Eleanor suggested with a smile. Absolutely not, Sarah protested. If anything, it should be the Eleanor Thompson Foundation. None of this would exist without her. How about the Second Chance Foundation? Marcus suggested. Because that's what this is really about. Giving people a second chance when the world has given up on them. Sarah nodded enthusiastically. I love that. A second chance is all anyone needs if they're willing to work for it. As they continued planning over dinner, Marcus reflected on the strange twists of fate that had brought them all together. He had built a technology empire by anticipating what people needed before they knew they needed it. But he had completely missed what his own mother needed until a homeless teenager had shown him. Now, instead of spending his days worried about stock prices and market share, he was planning ways to help vulnerable young people rebuild their lives. Instead of working 16-hour days and eating takeout in his office, he was having family dinners and learning to cook from his mother and Sarah. Instead of feeling constantly stressed and never satisfied, he felt peaceful and purposeful. I have one more announcement, Marcus said as they finished their meal. Both women looked at him expectantly. I bought a house, a big one with plenty of room for all of us, plus space for kids who need temporary placement while they're getting back on their feet. Eleanor clapped her hands together in delight. Marcus, that's wonderful. It's about 20 minutes from here in a good neighborhood with excellent schools, Marcus continued. I was thinking we could all live there together, if you both want to, and use it as both a family home and a small residential facility for the youth program. Sarah was staring at him in amazement. You bought a house for homeless kids? I bought a house for our family, Marcus corrected gently. And our family includes helping kids who need a safe place to land while they figure out their next steps. That evening, as Marcus helped clean up after dinner, he caught his reflection in the kitchen window. He looked different than he had 6 months ago. Less stressed, more relaxed, genuinely happy. The change wasn't just external. He felt fundamentally different about his life and his purpose. His phone, which used to buzz constantly with urgent business matters, now mostly contained messages from the youth program volunteers, updates from Sarah about college applications, and pictures from Eleanor's volunteer activities. Instead of feeling overwhelmed by demands on his time, he felt energized by meaningful work. As he said goodbye to his mother and Sarah that night, Marcus realized that freezing on that street corner 6 months ago had been the best thing that ever happened to him. In trying to help Sarah, he had discovered a part of himself that he thought he had lost forever. In taking care of his mother, he had learned what it meant to be truly successful. Walking to his car, Marcus smiled as he thought about the future. Tomorrow, he would start looking at properties for additional Second Chance Foundation locations. Next week, Sarah would begin her college coursework, while continuing to mentor homeless teens. And every Sunday, they would continue their family dinners. planning ways to change the world one young person at a time. Sometimes the most important business deals happen not in boardrooms, but on street corners. Sometimes the greatest returns on investment can't be measured in dollars, but in lives changed and hope restored. And sometimes, when you think you're helping someone else, you discover that they're actually saving you.